In episode 3, the body of Brooks McCutcheon is found the next day, and it doesn't take long for police to nab two perpetrators. Berger holds a press conference at City Hall where he announces that Rafael and Mateo Gallardo, who are 18 and 20, have been nabbed for the crime. To make sure that these two pay for what they did, Berger is assigning his top prosecutor to the case, a guy named Thomas Milligan, who tells reporters that he will accept the death penalty and nothing less. While Perry and Della have obviously heard about the McCutcheon murder, it's not really on their radar. They're still dealing with Sonny Grice, who is trying out some new produce suppliers, and he wants Della and Perry to write up some contracts. The latest place he's trying is Goldstein's Finest Produce, but you can already tell that Sonny isn't happy with what they brought him. When they get back to the office, though, Luisa and Sofia Gallardo are waiting for them. Sofia is Mateo's wife, and Luisa is their aunt. They want Perry to help out with the case because they claim that the boys did nothing wrong and they're being railroaded. After what Perry did for Emily Dodson, they think that Perry Mason would be the perfect lawyer. But they tell him, we don't really do that. Both Della and Perry apologize for the fact that they can't really help out, and Luisa seems to take it okay, but Sofia does not. She yells at Perry in Spanish, and all Perry can say is, sorry, I'm not the right man for this. That night, though, Luisa and Sofia's plea is still on Della's mind, and she has the perfect opportunity to help out because she's meeting with Berger. They're going to a party together at a woman named Camilla Nygaard's house. She's rich, single, and a successful woman in the area. Della tries to get Berger to accept a plea deal where it gives the boys parole, but Berger's not about to do that. He's only been on the job for about a month, and this is a big case. Brooks McCutcheon's death is big news because he was a huge part of the community. The party they're attending that night is for a piano concert, and they even have a tribute to Brooks McCutcheon because he was supposed to be in attendance. The concert is definitely something that neither of them were looking forward to, and when it ends, they're pretty happy. Della, however, does run into Nygaard, and she thanks her for the invite, telling her it was a lovely concert, and the two chat about Camilla's success. But this McCutcheon case wasn't just on Della's mind, it was also on Perry's mind as well. While Della was hobnobbing with socialites, Perry was hanging out with Strickland. Perry mentions how the Gallardo's aunt came to visit him that day, but he's not going to take the case. And Strickland mentions how Milligan wants this one really bad because this could be a resume builder. Ultimately, he wants to get to Washington, D.C. There is reason why Milligan should feel good about the case. They found McCutcheon's gold coin on the boys. Pete breaks down to Perry how Milligan is going to play it off in court, that the boys came up on him. They tried to rob him. McCutcheon fought him off. One of them panicked, and they shot him in the head. But what Pete knows, just from his sources being in City Hall, is that this wasn't a point-blank shooting. Whoever did this shot Brooks McCutcheon at range, and that just smells really fishy to Perry. Once Strickland heads out for the night, the curiosity is just getting to Perry, so he decides to sneak down to the police impound and look at the car. He starts looking at the bullet trajectory, the angle to which the bullet came from. None of it really makes sense that this was just a scared kid at night who shot once and ended up hitting Brooks McCutcheon in the head. He has to get home pretty quick, though, and get into bed because the next morning he has a meeting at Teddy's new school. Linda and Perry meet with the teacher, but Perry just wants to get the hell out of there because after he's done with this meeting, he blows off a meeting that he had with Della and a potential client to go meet with the Gallardos. Both Mateo and Rafael are very hesitant to trust Perry because they've been burned already. Perry explains that his aunt and Sofia came to visit him to take the case, but before he does that, he's got to know what he's dealing with. When Perry explains that Luisa and Sofia came to visit him, the boys then kind of buy in. They start going through a few exercises that Perry has for him, including holding their hand up. That gives Perry a clue on how high they had to hold the gun to get that shot off at that range and trajectory. He then sits down and wants to hear the boys' side of the story. He knows that the bus driver picked them out of a lineup as the killers, and the boys claim, well, that was because we were on that bus. I'd be able to pick him out of a lineup too. They get on that bus to collect bottles, and they were collecting bottles that night when they found the gold coin in the trash. They ended up selling it, and that's really what ended up leading to their arrest. Perry believes their story. The next day when he comes in the office, he meets with Della, and they're both on the same page. Sofia and Luisa's plea to them has just been sitting with them so long that they've agreed to take the case. Della wants to formulate a plan. Take this slow and focus on it step by step. Build their case, attack theirs, work the body, and the head will fall. And that's something she picked up when she went on a date the previous night to a boxing match with Anita St. Pierre. The only issue that Della has is how they're going to afford it, because the Gallardos can't pay for this, and they're not a charity. They need to figure out a way to have some cash income, and that's when they both come up with the idea of Sonny Grice. They go over to Grice's store and convince him to hire him on retainer to help him expand his business. There's a bunch of different abandoned buildings that would be perfect. They gave him these grand ideas of a Sonny market in every neighborhood, but in order to do that, they're going to have to do a lot of work for it. In reality, they're not going to have to do a lot of work for it, but they convince him that they are, and he agrees to put them on retainer, which is ultimately going to pay their way to defending the Gallardos. So Perry and Della agree to take the case, and the next day there's the arraignment. Milligan asks the court to not accept bail, claiming that the boys will run off to Mexico. And Perry points out they've never been to Mexico. They're Mexican-Americans, but they were born here. They don't know anybody in Mexico. That's dumb. Unfortunately, the judge doesn't seem to be a big fan of Perry, definitely doesn't seem to be a big fan of his clients, and he denies the boys of bail. When they exit court, the media is waiting to grill Perry on how he feels about the fact that the Gallardos were denied bail, and he says, "We weren't expecting fair treatment." One of the reporters asks, "Well, then you believe that they're innocent?" And Perry says, "Yeah, we wouldn't have taken the case if we didn't. I mean, the evidence is flimsy and see-through, and we're going to prove that at trial." And that's when another reporter says, "So you're not concerned with the rumors that forensics has found Rafael Gallardo's fingerprints on Brooks McCutcheon's car?" And Perry has to play it off like he's not concerned, but he absolutely is. This is the first he's hearing about it, and he knows that it's got to be true. That's why Milligan floated it out to the press, and that's why Milligan was so confident in the court. And what pisses off Perry is the fact that Milligan clearly isn't as dumb as he wanted him to be. He's pretty smart, so Perry's got his work cut out for him. Della and Perry head back to the office to regroup, and one of the people that they're going to want to hire to help them out is Paul Drake, who visits them, and he's not happy. He did that job for Pete Strickland, but he feels like he was used. When he handed over the information he found, he was doing so under the assumption that there was a hit out on Perkins. In reality, the DA used the information that Paul got them to arrest Perkins on racketeering, loan sharking, and this is a big blow to the African American community. So Paul doesn't feel great about the job that he just did, and he wants to take it up with Perry because ultimately Perry introduced him to Pete. He confronts Perry about this, and Perry feels horrible about it. He was really just trying to get Paul some work. They bring up the Gallardo case saying they could use Paul for it, but Paul wants more than that. He wants to trust them. And he tells Perry, "I just don't know how we're going to get there." And Perry says, "Honestly, I don't know how we're going to get there either." And that is something that Drake does believe, so it appears he's going to join the case. Now it's just a matter of seeing what the prosecution has. Perry goes to collect the evidence box, and by the way, it's a box that's been tampered with. Somebody paid one of the cops to slip something in there, and Perry has no idea about that. But Perry looks over the box while Della looks over some of Brooks McCutcheon's books. One of the things that Perry has been able to piecemeal together already is the fact that Brooks owned the Morocco boat and a rival boat was set on fire. And that's really one of the keys to this. When Della looked over Brooks's book, she found some very disconcerting things. Brooks's boat, the Morocco, was literally and figuratively a sinking ship. Brooks would have this thing fixed up and then stiff the companies for the money. Della was able to find a trail of unpaid debts, and every time a creditor would come after Brooks, he would just liquidate and then dump the Morocco's ownership into a new shell company. This would allow the company that owned the Morocco to rack up bills, which they couldn't pay, and then they would just sell the ship from that company to another company. It would leave nothing behind to make good on the debts and screw everybody over. Paul and Perry know that they have to go on the Morocco and find out what's going on in this ship, because ultimately they need to figure out who would want Brooks McCutcheon dead. They head over there, and Perry starts asking one waitress a few questions regarding if she knows Brooks, but she gets very uncomfortable. While Perry poked around in the front of the house, Paul went to the back asking some of the cooks if they know anything. They tell Paul that they were in dry dock all last week. High rollers don't come there. And when Paul points out the produce that they have, they say, "Yeah, all we ever get is potatoes and carrots, nothing more." And that produce, by the way, comes from Goldstein's Produce, the same place that was supplying Sonny Grice, a company whose owner was recently subpoenaed by a grand jury. When Paul is done talking to the staff, he's walking around the ship, and that's when Perry pops out of nowhere because he's being chased by Holcomb and a few of his men. They want to catch Perry before he gets off the ship. Perry gets out in the casino floor, and the men are still after him, but they can't cause too big of a scene because there are a bunch of patrons around. So Perry, thinking fast, makes an announcement to the room, introducing himself as Perry Mason, the lawyer, but then offering up a toast to Holcomb. Holcomb knows that he can't take Perry Mason down. He's just going to have to let him go. Holding him there would cause too much of a scene, so Perry's won this one. But as Perry and Paul were exiting the Morocco, the owner of Goldstein's Produce was busy being murdered. The man who ends up killing Goldstein calls up a rich socialite named Grippen, who runs in the same circles as Lydell McCutcheon. He tells Grippen that Goldstein has been killed. Grippen hangs up the phone, goes into his drawer, pulls out a grand jury subpoena for a Brooks McCutcheon, and he starts burning it. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.